The sky is still dark when you open your eyes. The city outside sleeps cloaked in quiet, but you don't reach for your distractions, not yet. No glow from a screen, no chatter, no plans. Just breath and the rhythm of your heart in a silent room. You sit up slowly. The floor is cold. You wrap your robe around your shoulders and step toward the small table where a scroll waits marked with yesterday's reading. The morning belongs to no one yet, not to the emperor, not to the world, not even to your responsibilities. It belongs to you. Marcus Aurelius began his days like this. Before the sun, before the council, before the complaints and politics and requests, he sat in stillness. He wrote in his journal not to teach others, but to steady himself. When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. This is your first ritual silence before motion. Not because silence is magical, but because it breaks the cycle of waking up reactive. Before the world demands something of you, you meet yourself. You might not endure this at first. The mind rebels. It wants noise, activity, productivity. But the Stoic mind waits. It watches. It prepares. You are not a servant to the morning. You are the master of it. So you breathe slowly. You bring to mind the day ahead not with dread or craving, but clarity. Who will you face? What obstacles may come? How will you respond? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. To understand this better, let's go back to an ancient lesson from Marcus Aurelius. You rise from your bench and move to the basin. The water is cold, colder than you'd like. You pause. A part of you resists, but instead of warming it, you do as the Stoics did. You lean in, because this is the second ritual choosing discomfort on purpose. In ancient Rome, many Stoics began their days with cold water, not as punishment, but as practice. Seneca often wrote about the value of hardship taken voluntarily. He believed that a person who faces discomfort regularly becomes unshaken when it arrives uninvited. You let the water touch your face, then your arms. It bites, then it clears. The breath sharpens. The moment returns you to yourself. It's not about heroics. It's about remembering that comfort is not a right. That strength is built in moments like this, small and forgettable but cumulative. Epictetus, born a slave, knew real discomfort. He limped from a broken leg twisted by a cruel master. And yet his mind stayed whole. His discipline wasn't born in palaces, but in practice, daily, deliberate quiet. This ritual isn't about water. It's about will. Each time you do something you don't want to do but know is good for you, you reassert the authority of reason over impulse. Scholars debate, is voluntary hardship outdated in modern times? After all, life is hard enough. But Stoicism argues the opposite. Life is hardest when you're surprised by challenge. Discipline prepares you. It teaches your mind to stay calm even as the body flinches. So now you don't just endure the cold, you welcome it. You say, let this be my training. And suddenly the day no longer owns you. You've already done something difficult, something unnecessary, and you've done it willingly. That's the quiet power of discomfort. It builds a fire no storm can put out. The sun is still low when you sit down again, this time with your scroll, your journal, or perhaps just your thoughts. You haven't spoken to anyone yet, and that's by design. Because the third ritual is simple but rare. Build the mind before you open your mouth. Marcus Aurelius never skipped this step. Each morning he returned to the same questions. What is within my control today? What will likely test me? How can I meet it with reason instead of emotion? This practice wasn't passive. It was mental training. A soldier doesn't march into battle without checking his armor. A Stoic doesn't meet the world until he has examined his mind. So you begin the day with ideas, not noise. You reach for wisdom before you reach for reaction. You read slowly, not to absorb quotes, but to sharpen your lens. One passage, one sentence, one thought that steadies your attention, like an anchor in shifting waters. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." A harsh reminder, but a needed one. Especially in a world where we often speak before we think, reply before we reflect, and act before we ask, is this necessary? Scholars often debate whether Stoicism was too solitary. Shouldn't we engage with others more? Shouldn't we lead with action? But Stoicism never said, avoid the world. It said, prepare for it. The morning silence is not an escape. It's a forge. So you take these minutes seriously. You write out your thoughts. You plan your responses to rudeness, praise, temptation, delay. You don't leave your behavior up to chance. Because when the first challenge comes, and it will, you won't be improvising your virtue. You'll be drawing from what you rehearsed here before the world had a chance to interfere. You pour a small bowl of barley slice fruit with calm hands, and hear voices in the courtyard, early footsteps, a neighbor calling to her child, the city waking up. You haven't left the house yet, but your next ritual has already begun. You prepare for insult before breakfast. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Today I shall meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil." He didn't say if he said shall. It was not a guess. It was a guarantee. You sip your water and consider that. Not with bitterness, but with awareness. Today someone will be late. Someone will say something careless. Someone will misunderstand you. The immature mind reacts to this with surprise. The Stoic mind expects it and so prepares. You rehearse calm, not for performance, but for peace. You visualize scenarios, a rude comment, a passive-aggressive message, a disapproving look. How will you meet it? With ego, with silence, with clarity, you choose in advance. That's the ritual. In Rome, even emperors weren't shielded from criticism. Marcus faced senators who mocked him, generals who defied him, citizens who blamed him. He ruled not with outbursts, but with equanimity. And that wasn't luck. That was discipline. Some question this mental rehearsal. Isn't it negative? Does expecting the worst invite cynicism? But Stoicism sees it differently. To anticipate is not to welcome suffering. It is to remove its sting. A man who has rehearsed insult does not flinch when it arrives. He remains rooted. So you eat quietly, not just to fuel the body, but to steady the mind. You finish your meal knowing that you will encounter friction, but also knowing it won't own you. You rise not armored in defense, but wrapped in foresight. And that's enough to walk into the world calmly. You step outside, and already the world begins to pull at you. A neighbor wants something. A stranger walks too slowly. The noise of carts, the heat of the sun, the chaos of morning traffic, all of it pushes against your patience. But you've rehearsed for this. Because the next ritual is this putting duty before emotion. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being. Not for applause, not for comfort, but because it is right. The Stoics believed your purpose is not to chase what feels good, but to do what is good. You're not a bundle of feelings. You are a rational being capable of rising above irritation, distraction, and self-indulgence. So now you act not because you feel like it, but because it aligns with your nature. You answer the message, return the favor, do the task you've been delaying, not with resentment, but with readiness. This isn't robotic. It's respectful to yourself and to the world. To follow emotion is to be pulled in every direction. But to follow duty, that's how you remain steady even when the world isn't. Epictetus said, when we are thwarted or upset, it's not the things themselves that trouble us, but our opinions about them. So what do you believe about duty? Is it a burden, or is it the path? Some philosophers argue, doesn't suppressing emotion lead to collapse? But Stoicism doesn't teach suppression. It teaches redirection. Emotion is acknowledged. Then reason decides what happens next. So you keep walking. You feel the frustration rise, then fade. You focus not on your mood, but on your movement. You ask, what is needed of me in this moment? Then you do it. Not with drama, just with dignity. The sun climbs higher as you move through the streets. Dust gathers on your sandals. You pass vendors, shouting beggars, pleading nobles strutting by in polished robes. But you wear your plain tunic, cinched tight, unadorned. You don't need to be noticed. Because the next ritual is ancient and powerful walk among the crowd without craving attention. In Rome, philosophers like Epictetus and Musonius Rufus taught their students to dress modestly, to live simply, to walk without spectacle. Not to deny themselves joy, but to train the soul to stop chasing validation. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the world, wore the same rough cloak year after year. His palace was not decadent. He ate what soldiers ate. He walked the streets quietly. Why? Because he knew that needing admiration is a form of weakness. You pass a mirror in a window. You don't stop. Not because appearance doesn't matter, but because it doesn't define you. Stoicism teaches that your worth is your character, not your costume. Someone glances at you. No praise, no insult, just a look, and you don't flinch. Because you no longer ride the wave of every opinion. This, the Stoics believed, is the beginning of freedom to walk unseen and still feel whole. Some argue, isn't this a rejection of beauty or status? No. Stoicism is not rejection, it's detachment. You may enjoy fine things, but you are not enslaved by them. You don't depend on decoration to feel solid. You move through the world quietly. Your steps are firm. Your gaze is steady. You feel the temptation to compare, to posture, to impress, and you let it pass like a passing wind. This is your practice walk where others seek to be admired and seek only to be good. You are enough without being noticed, and that is strength most people never touch. By midday, the body begins to demand more. A meal, a pause, maybe a bit of indulgence. You return home, step into the shaded courtyard, and sit with what the Stoics considered a sacred act, eating with awareness. Epictetus taught his students not only how to think, but how to eat. Do not eat like a glutton, he would say. Be silent, be thoughtful, be present. Because even in the simplest act, lifting bread to mouth, discipline is forged. So you prepare your meal not for taste alone, but for nourishment. Perhaps olives, lentils, some simple grains. No feast, no distraction, no rush, and you eat slowly. You notice the texture of each bite, the rhythm of your chewing, the moment your body feels satisfied rather than full. You resist the urge to scroll, to entertain, to escape. This is not punishment, it is practice. Because self-discipline isn't found only in big decisions. It's built in these quiet daily moments. Most people don't overeat because they're hungry. They overeat because they're elsewhere, lost in thought, in story, in reward-seeking. But you train presence at the table. Marcus Aurelius didn't see food as pleasure or escape. He saw it as function. He ate like he ruled with restraint. Just as it is within my power to walk with reason, he wrote, so it is within my power to eat with reason. Some might say, where is the joy in this? But Stoicism doesn't deny joy. It refines it. You enjoy the food more, not because it's rich, but because you're awake to it. No shame, no guilt, no compulsion. You eat. You give thanks. You stop when the body says enough. And in that quiet, you discover something rare. A hunger not for more, but for less. For just what is needed, and nothing more. The afternoon stretches ahead, heavy with responsibility. Tasks await. Messages pile up. A request interrupts another. You feel the pull to rush to multitask, to get through it all quickly and gain some relief. But you pause. Because the Stoic path doesn't chase relief, it chooses right action without expectation. You begin again. You return to your work. But this time you bring no need for recognition. No desire to be thanked, to be seen, or even to finish quickly. You simply do what is required with care, with presence, with humility. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others unless you are doing so with a view to some mutual benefit. Think only of what you have to do and do it now. That's your practice, doing the thing for its own sake. Not for praise, not for promotion, not even for a result. You write because it must be written. You fix what's broken because it's within your power. You listen to someone's complaint not to be admired for your patience, but because it's right to be patient. This is harder than it sounds, because the ego hungers for feedback. It wants a nod, a clap, a share. And when it doesn't receive those things, it sulks, withdraws, and resists effort. The Stoic refuses to be governed by that. Seneca once observed that many are lazy not because of the work, but because they resent not being recognized for it. But the wise person, he sees each act of service as a gift to his own character. So now you return to your work, one small task at a time. No flourish, no complaint, no fantasy about how others will respond. Only a quiet thought. Let me do this well, and let that be enough. And surprisingly, it is. The day presses on. Your energy dips. Your mind begins to wander. You've responded to the demands, answered. The questions completed, the tasks. But now comes another discipline, not of effort, but of returning to stillness. This is the 9th ritual, the midday reset through breath. You step away just for a few minutes. A quiet corridor, a shaded garden, a corner of the room untouched by noise. You don't need incense or a retreat. You only need your attention and your breath. Marcus Aurelius, in the middle of his duties, often returned to his inner sanctuary. He called it the mind untangled from externals. He wrote, "People seek retreats for themselves in the country, by the sea and the mountains. You have the power to retire into yourself whenever you choose. So you close your eyes not to escape, but to reset. You inhale deeply. You notice the breath not to control it, but to remember it. You feel the tension in your shoulders. You let them drop. You trace the path of your thoughts and gently pull them back to this moment. This is not indulgence, it's discipline. In a world that glorifies constant action, the ability to pause consciously is a mark of mastery. Some argue, what's the point of breathing when there's so much to do? But Stoicism says the opposite. What's the point of doing so much if you've forgotten how to be? This reset is not long. 2 minutes, maybe 5. But it realigns you. You return not frazzled, but focused. You carry less tension into your next task, and you remember that you are not a machine. You are a being of reason. And reason to stay sharp must sometimes be quiet. You open your eyes, still here, still calm, and ready to begin again. The afternoon unfolds. A conversation begins perhaps with a friend, a colleague, or someone difficult. Words start moving fast. Jokes, complaints, advice, gossip. You feel the pressure to jump in, to correct, to impress. But you resist, because now you enter another daily ritual training restraint in conversation. Epictetus warned, "Let silence be your general rule, or say only what is necessary and in few words." He wasn't advocating awkwardness, he was teaching clarity. Speech to a Stoic was a tool, not a reflex. So you listen, fully, without rehearsing your response while they're speaking, without reaching for something witty or wise, you just hear them. And when you speak, you ask yourself, is it true, is it useful, is it kind? If the answer is no, you let the words pass unspoken. That's strength, not silence for silence's sake, but silence as a shield from vanity, error, and excess. Marcus Aurelius practiced this in court, in council, and even with those who insulted him. He didn't retaliate with sarcasm. He didn't perform cleverness. He spoke slowly, honestly, and only when needed. And those who expected drama were left disarmed by his calm. In your own life, how often have words created more trouble than clarity? A small exaggeration, a rushed reply, a defensive outburst. Each one is a crack in your inner stillness. So the Stoics ask, what if you spoke less but meant more? Some might question, does this make conversation dull or distant? But restraint doesn't mean coldness. It means intention. It turns every word into something deliberate, not reactive. And people feel that. They sense the depth behind your quiet. So now in this moment, you choose your words carefully, or you choose not to speak at all. And in that choice, you practice mastery. Not of others, but of yourself. The sun begins its descent. The city softens. You return home slower, now quieter. And as the shadows stretch long across the floor, you prepare for the most personal of rituals, the evening review without excuse. This is not punishment. It's reflection. And it was sacred to the Stoics. Seneca in his letters described this practice clearly. When the day is over, I examine my conscience. I look back on what I have done and said, and hide nothing from myself. Why conceal from myself what I hide from no one? So you sit in stillness, perhaps with a candle flickering low, perhaps in your room alone. You do not scroll, you do not distract, you do not dramatize. You simply ask, where did I act in line with virtue today? Where did I fall short? You remember that moment you stayed calm under pressure. Good. You remember when you rushed, when you spoke harshly, when you craved approval. Not with shame, but with honesty. Because this is the purpose, not to judge, but to observe. To look your day in the eye and say, here is what I chose. Here is what I can improve. Marcus Aurelius did this too. His meditations are the record of those nightly conversations with himself. A man ruling an empire, yet still questioning his own character. That is discipline. That is humility. Some philosophers argue, should we really examine ourselves this way every night? Isn't that too intense? But the Stoics believed intensity was better than ignorance. To grow, you must see. Not once a month, not once a year, but daily. So now you write, or think, or whisper softly to yourself what you saw today. Not to punish, but to prepare, because tomorrow you begin again. And tomorrow you'll be a little stronger, because tonight you looked clearly. The candle is nearly out. The city beyond your window hums in tired murmurs. The day is done, or at least it can be if you let it be. This is your next discipline, perhaps the hardest one of all, letting the day die. You've reviewed your choices. You've faced your failures. But now the Stoics ask one more thing of you: release. Not forgetting, not denial, but release. Because what's done is done. No regret will rewrite it. No worry will improve it. Marcus Aurelius captured it clearly. Do not disturb yourself by imagining your whole life. Don't demand to know what's coming. Whatever happens today is enough. So now you lie back. You put the pen down. You don't rehearse what you'll say tomorrow. You don't replay what someone said wrong. You don't bargain with what cannot be changed. You simply say, this day has served its purpose. I now let it go. This isn't apathy, it's closure. The same way a warrior sheathes his sword after battle. Not because there will be no more battles, but because he knows the difference between action and obsession. Some say, isn't it wise to hold on, to analyze, to stay vigilant? The Stoics disagree. Wisdom requires rest. The mind, like the body, must recover to grow. Sleep is not a pause in virtue. It's part of it. So you exhale. You let go of the need to fix what's already happened. You release the weight of praise and the sting of failure. They belong to the past now. And you belong to this moment. Still, silent, clean, you pull the blanket close, not to hide, but to accept the night. It asks nothing from you. It only offers stillness. And in that stillness, you sleep. Not because everything is solved, but because you're no longer trying to solve everything. The night fades. You open your eyes again. But before the day can pull you into its pace, another test arrives, quieter than the rest, yet just as crucial, rising above the body's demands. The body whispers, stay in bed. Delay the task. Eat more, speak sharply, seek comfort. It's subtle. It doesn't shout. But it steers you. And if left unexamined, it governs you. Epictetus warned against this soft tyranny. If you want to be free, he said, don't wish for things to happen as you like. Wish for them to happen as they do, and discipline your desires accordingly. The Stoics did not hate the body. They honored it. But they never allowed it to lead the soul. Because they knew that freedom means choice, and the ability to choose means sometimes saying no to the flesh. So when you feel hunger creep in, you ask, is it need or habit? When you feel anger swell, you ask, is this my body flinching or my reason responding? When laziness knocks, you feel the weight, but you still rise. Cato, the Stoic senator, walked barefoot in winter. He wore rough cloaks. He trained his body to obey him, not the other way around. His enemies called him extreme. His followers called him incorruptible. The truth was both. You won't need to live like Cato, but you will face temptations to overindulge, to react, to slacken. The Stoic approach is not to suppress these urges, but to observe them, separate them from the self, and then decide. Some wonder, is this repression? Won't denying the body create tension? But Stoicism isn't denial, it's direction. The body is a servant, not a master. So you rise now, not because you feel like it, but because you chose to. And in that choice, you've already won your first battle of the day. Later, as the day begins to smooth into its rhythm again, you reach for another tool in your Stoic arsenal, one not born out of crisis, but chosen deliberately, the practice of voluntary hardship. You do something uncomfortable on purpose. Perhaps you fast a little longer. Perhaps you walk a long distance instead of riding. Perhaps you delay a pleasure, deny a luxury, or spend time in silence when you could be entertained. It's not because you must, it's because you can. Seneca wrote often of this practice. Set aside a certain number of days, he said, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself all the while, "Is this the condition I feared?" That's the heart of it. Fear loses power when you choose what others only endure. Marcus Aurelius would sometimes sleep on the floor of his chamber, even as emperor, to remind himself that comfort is fleeting and survival is not fragile. He walked among soldiers, endured harsh weather, and refused to pamper his body. Why? Because hardship builds freedom. When you prove to yourself that you can go without, you stop being controlled by need. Some critics ask, isn't life already hard enough? Why seek more discomfort? But the Stoics reverse the question. If life is hard, shouldn't you train for it? Voluntary hardship isn't suffering, it's sovereignty. It says I can be content with less. I can lose what others fear losing. I know how to live simply if fate demands it. So today, you decline the easy path, not to prove anything, not to boast, but to rehearse. Because when real difficulty arrives, and it will, you'll face it not with panic, but with recognition. You've already been here, and you are ready. The day closes in, but unlike before, you don't feel drained, you feel anchored. You've moved with purpose. You've resisted impulse. You've acted from principle, not reaction. And now something unexpected arises from all that restraint: freedom. True freedom. Because this is the final Stoic ritual, not a new task, but a realization. Daily discipline becomes daily liberation. At first, the structure seemed heavy. The silence, the cold, the restraint, the reflection, all of it felt like sacrifice. But now something shifts. You feel lighter, clearer. You're no longer tossed by every mood, every demand, every disappointment. Marcus Aurelius once asked, "Is freedom anything else but the power to live as we will?" But for the Stoic, to will something meant not whatever the body wants, but what reason approves. You now understand what they meant by eudaimonia, a flourishing life. Not because it's easy, but because it's ordered. Because you are no longer a prisoner of delay, temptation, or pride. You wake on time. You speak with care. You eat with awareness. You reflect honestly. And all of this makes you light inside. Some philosophers wondered, did the Stoics value control too much? But maybe they misunderstood. Stoic control isn't about dominating the world. It's about releasing what isn't yours and reclaiming what is your judgment, your action, your soul. This then is your reward. Not praise, not comfort, but integrity. Your actions now match your values. Your day is no longer something you endure or escape. It's something you shape, and in shaping it, you shape yourself. So you end today with no guilt, no rush, no regret. You've practiced the ancient rituals. You've done your duty. You've met yourself again and again in every moment. You lie down now, not with exhaustion, but with peace, because nothing owns you anymore, and in that you finally become free. The lamp is dim now. Outside, the world exhales in quiet. Inside, you feel a calm that doesn't need explanation. It wasn't given by others. It was earned through attention, discipline, and care. You've walked through the day like a Roman philosopher might have, not rushing, not chasing, but choosing. You've eaten without gluttony, spoken without vanity, worked without needing praise. You've done hard things, and you've done them gently. This is what the Stoics knew, that the strongest life is also the simplest. It's not about being unfeeling. It's about being unmoved by what doesn't deserve your energy. The world will pull at you again tomorrow. There will be noise, expectation, temptation. But you've built something no one can see: a rhythm, a practice, a temple within. And that's yours now. So you breathe slowly. You let your thoughts settle like dust in a shaft of golden light. You need nothing more. You ask nothing of the night. You don't reach for another moment. You simply rest, because you've already done the one thing that matters most. You've lived deliberately, and that is rare. So close your eyes now. Let the rituals dissolve into stillness. Let your breath be the only sound. You've earned your rest.